I pulled into their driveway just after 2 in the afternoon, my heart pounding with excitement. Michael and Ashley's modest colonial sat nestled between two sprawling oaks, the white shutters freshly painted, their Honda Civic parked neatly in the garage. I'd been planning this surprise for weeks, driving up from North Carolina to see them unannounced, to spend a long weekend with my son and his beautiful wife. They had no idea I was coming. I could already imagine their faces when I rang that doorbell. The spare key was exactly where Michael had told me it would be, under the clay pot with the dead geraniums that Ashley kept meaning to replace. My hands trembled a little as I turned it in the lock. The house smelled like coffee and something floral. Everything was quiet. Maybe they were out. Maybe I'd have to wait in the kitchen with a cup of coffee, grinning like an idiot, ready to surprise them when they came home from wherever they'd gone. But then I heard it. A sound from upstairs, a woman's laugh, not Ashley's laugh, not the light, musical sound I knew so well. This was different, lower, unfamiliar. My stomach did a strange flip, and suddenly I wasn't thinking about surprises anymore. Let me back up a moment, tell you about the life before this afternoon, the life that still felt real just an hour ago, when I was driving north on I-85 with a cooler full of my homemade lasagna and a heart full of anticipation. My name is Karen, and I'm 58 years old. I've been divorced for 16 years, and I've made peace with that, mostly. My marriage to Michael's father was decent enough, but it ran out of steam around year 12, and we both knew it. No drama, no affair, just two people who'd grown in different directions. We split the house proceeds, he moved to Charlotte, and I stayed in Greensboro to be close to Michael and his younger sister, Linda. Michael was always the responsible one. Even as a kid, he'd organize his toys by color. He got a scholarship to UNC, graduated with a degree in business administration, and landed a job at a mid-sized logistics company before he even walked across the stage. At 28, he bought this house in Durham, paid a down payment from his savings, and got a fantastic mortgage rate. I was so proud of him I actually cried. Then he met Ashley at a company retreat in 2018. She worked in HR. According to Michael, she was smart, funny, and had this infectious energy that made you feel like you were the most interesting person in the room. I met her a month later at Sunday dinner, and I understood immediately why my son was smitten. Ashley had this warmth about her. She laughed at my jokes. She asked about my work as a dental hygienist. She told me stories about growing up in a small town in Virginia. Within 6 months, Michael proposed. Within a year, they were married in a small ceremony at a vineyard outside Chapel Hill. That was 3 years ago. 3 good years. Or so I thought. I visited them regularly, maybe once a month. We'd have dinner, we'd watch movies. Sometimes Michael and I would sit on the back porch while Ashley read inside, and he'd tell me about work, about their plans. They wanted to renovate the kitchen in the next couple of years, maybe start trying for kids in another year or two. Everything seemed solid, stable, happy. My own life was quiet but full. I had my job, my small house, my book club. I'd even started dating a man named David last year. Nothing serious, just nice dinners and someone to talk to. My sister Linda lived 2 hours away in Charlotte, but we talked on the phone twice a week. I had my routines, my purpose. I wasn't lonely. So when Michael called me 3 weeks ago and said, "Mom, you should come visit sometime soon," something in his voice made me decide to do it right then, not wait for a scheduled weekend, just pack a bag and go. I'd built up some vacation days at the dental office. My boss, Patricia, had been pushing me to take time off anyway, and I missed them. I missed sitting at their kitchen table and hearing about their lives. I didn't call ahead because I wanted to surprise them. I told myself that was the reason. Now I wonder if some part of me already knew, some instinct that made me want to catch them off guard. The woman's laugh came again from upstairs, followed by a man's voice. Not Michael's voice, a stranger's voice. My hand was still on the doorknob. I could have left right then. I could have gotten back in my car, driven to a hotel, and called Michael to say I'd decided to drive up after all. I could have preserved whatever came next, but I didn't. Instead, I quietly closed the front door behind me and stood in the foyer, my car keys still in my hand, my breath catching in my throat. "Come on," the stranger's voice said, playful, intimate. "She won't be home for hours." My legs moved without consulting my brain. I climbed the stairs slowly, carefully, my heart hammering so hard I was sure they'd hear it. The master bedroom door was halfway open. Afternoon light spilled through the gap, and I could see the corner of their bed. The bed Michael and Ashley had picked out together at that furniture store in Raleigh. I didn't look inside. I couldn't. Instead, I turned and walked back downstairs, my hands shaking so badly I could barely grip the banister. I made it to the kitchen, sat down at the table where I'd shared so many meals with my son and his wife, and just sat there. Just sat there in the quiet, listening to the muffled sounds from upstairs, trying to understand what I'd just heard. I sat there in that kitchen for what felt like hours, but was probably only 15 minutes. My mind kept fracturing into different versions of reality. Maybe I'd misheard. Maybe it was the television. Maybe I was having some kind of episode. But I knew what I'd heard. I knew the tone of that man's voice, the intimacy in it. The sounds from upstairs had stopped. The house was quiet again except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of a car passing on the street outside. I needed to leave. I needed to get out of that house before they came downstairs and found me sitting at their kitchen table like some kind of ghost. But I couldn't move. My phone buzzed in my purse. A text from Michael. "Hey, Mom, just checking in. Everything okay?" The timestamp said 2:47 p.m. He was thinking about me. He was checking in while his wife was upstairs with another man. The cruelty of it, the casual normalcy of it, made something inside my chest twist. I didn't answer. Instead, I stood up on shaky legs and walked to the garage. I needed to think. I needed to figure out what to do with this knowledge that was now sitting inside my skull like a tumor. The drive to the Hampton Inn near the airport took 40 minutes. I checked in under my name, paid cash even though the clerk looked at me funny for it, and sat on the edge of the bed in room 247 and just stared at the beige walls. My hands were still shaking. My mouth tasted like metal. For 2 hours, I didn't call anyone. I didn't text anyone. I just sat there and tried to convince myself that what I'd heard wasn't what I thought it was. But every time I closed my eyes, I heard that laugh again, that unfamiliar woman's laugh, that intimate, possessive tone of a man who clearly felt he belonged in my son's bed. At 5:15 p.m., I finally called Linda. "Karen?" She picked up on the second ring. My sister knew me better than anyone. She could probably hear the destruction in my voice just from that one word. "What's wrong?" "I need you to listen to me very carefully," I said, "and I need you to not interrupt me until I'm done telling you what happened." I told her everything, every detail. The spare key under the pot, the laugh, the stranger's voice, the way he said, "She won't be home for hours." By the time I finished, I was crying, harsh, ugly sobs that I couldn't control. "Oh my God," Linda whispered. "Oh my God, Karen, are you sure? Could you have—" "I'm sure," I said. "I know what I heard." "You need to talk to him," she said. "You need to ask Michael directly before you do anything. You need to know the facts." But I already knew the facts. The question was what to do with them. I spent that night alone, in room 247, ordering room service I couldn't eat and watching television I couldn't focus on. My mind was a carousel of scenarios. Was Ashley having an affair? Was Michael? Were they in an open relationship and just hadn't told me? The not knowing was almost worse than the knowing. At 10:47 p.m., I texted Michael. "Hi, honey. Got in town earlier than expected. Staying at a hotel near the airport tonight. Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow." His response came in 30 seconds. "Mom, that's great. Why didn't you call? We could have picked you up. Come by in the morning for breakfast?" I stared at that text for a long time. The normalcy of it, the innocence. Or was it? Maybe he knew. Maybe he was playing along. I responded, "Sure, what time?" 8? Ashley's making her famous blueberry pancakes. I set an alarm for 6 in the morning and tried to sleep, knowing it wouldn't happen. I was right. I lay in that hotel bed until dawn, listening to the sound of the ice machine in the hallway, running through every conversation I'd had with Michael in the past 3 years. Had there been signs? Had I missed something? At 7:45 a.m., I pulled into their driveway again. The same driveway, the same house. But everything felt different. The white shutters looked sinister now. The oak trees looked like they were watching me. Michael opened the door before I even knocked. He was wearing a gray Notre Dame sweatshirt and jeans. His hair was still damp from the shower. He looked like my son. He looked innocent. "Mom!" He pulled me into a hug that felt like a knife. "This is such a great surprise. What made you decide to come up?" "Just missed you two," I said. My voice sounded normal. That was the terrifying part. I could still sound normal. Ashley appeared in the kitchen doorway, flour on her hands. She was wearing one of Michael's old t-shirts, and her hair was in a messy bun. She looked beautiful and wholesome, and like she belonged in a commercial for family values. "Karen, oh my gosh, Michael didn't tell us you were coming." She came over and hugged me, and I let her, even though my instinct was to recoil. "The pancakes are almost ready. Come sit down." They sat me at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd sat yesterday afternoon, while my world collapsed. And Michael poured me coffee in a mug that said, "World's Best Mom," on it. It was a gift I'd given them for Christmas 3 years ago. "So what's the occasion?" Michael asked, settling into the chair across from me. "You usually call ahead." This was the moment. This was where I could ask the question, where I could watch their faces. But I wasn't ready. Or maybe I was afraid of the answer. "Just needed a break from work," I said. "Patricia's been on my case about taking vacation days. Thought I'd surprise you guys." Ashley set down a plate of blueberry pancakes in front of me. They looked delicious. They smelled delicious. I couldn't imagine eating anything ever again. "You should have told us," Ashley said, sitting down next to Michael. He put his hand on her knee, and I watched that gesture like I was analyzing evidence in a trial. Was it real? Was it performance? "We could have planned something special." "This is special," I said. We ate breakfast, and they told me about work, about the kitchen renovation they'd decided to push back another year because the contractor had screwed up the estimate, about a vacation they were thinking about taking to the Outer Banks in July. Michael did most of the talking. Ashley interjected occasionally, laughing at his jokes, looking at him with what appeared to be genuine affection. Maybe I'd been wrong. Maybe I'd misunderstood what I'd heard. But I knew I hadn't, and I needed proof. After breakfast, I told them I was exhausted from the drive and wanted to rest at the hotel for a few hours. Michael insisted I take a nap in their guest room instead, but I declined. They seemed disappointed, but not suspicious. They walked me to my car and waved as I pulled out of the driveway. I drove to the Target on Chapel Hill Road and bought a small digital camera with a zoom lens. I bought a laptop. I bought coffee and a thermos. Then I found a parking spot on the street that had a view of their driveway and settled in to wait. I felt sick. I felt like I was betraying Michael by spying on him, but I also felt like Michael had already betrayed himself, and I was just trying to understand the shape of that betrayal. At 2:15 p.m., a silver Subaru pulled into their driveway. I'd never seen that car before. A man got out, mid-40s, wearing jeans and a polo shirt, carrying a bouquet of flowers. Not the kind of flowers you bring to a neighbor, the kind you bring to someone you're sleeping with. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the camera steady. He rang the doorbell. The door opened almost immediately, like Ashley had been waiting for him. She was still wearing Michael's t-shirt. She looked shocked to see him, or she was a very good actress. Either way, she pulled him inside. I sat in that car and took pictures of the closed door. I took pictures of the empty driveway. I felt like I was going to vomit. 2 hours and 45 minutes later, the silver Subaru pulled out of the driveway. The man was alone. He drove toward downtown Durham. I made a decision that I would probably regret. I followed him. He drove to a small office complex on 9th Street, the kind of place where a doctor might have a practice, or a lawyer, or a therapist. He parked and went inside. I sat in my car and stared at the building until my eyes went blurry. Then I did something I'd never done before in my 58 years of life. I called a private investigator. His name was Tom Reynolds, and his office was 3 blocks away. He agreed to see me that afternoon. His office was small and smelled like old coffee and filing cabinets. He was younger than I expected, maybe late 40s, with kind eyes that had seen too much. "I think my son's wife is having an affair," I said, and then I started crying again. Tom didn't ask a lot of questions. He just listened, took notes, and told me his rate was $200 an hour, with a minimum retainer of $800. I wrote him a check on the spot. I didn't even flinch at the amount. "I'll need photos, dates, times, and the license plate of the other vehicle," he said, "and I'll need to know where your son works and what his schedule is like." I gave him everything I had: Michael's office address, his phone number, his schedule. I felt like I was betraying him with every word, but I also felt like I was fighting for him, like I was trying to save him from a lie. Tom said he'd have preliminary information within 48 hours. I drove back to the Hampton Inn and called Linda again. She'd been waiting by her phone all day. "I followed her," I said, "or rather, I followed the man who came to the house. I hired a private investigator." "Karen, what are you doing?" Linda's voice was sharp with worry. "This isn't you. This is not how you handle things." "I don't know how to handle this," I said. "I don't know what to do. My son is being cheated on, and he doesn't even know it." "Or maybe he does," Linda said quietly. "Maybe that's not your story to tell." But it was my story. I'd walked into it when I turned that key in the lock. I was part of it now, whether I wanted to be or not. The next day crawled by. I told Michael and Ashley I had a migraine and needed to rest. I stayed in my hotel room and refreshed my email every 5 minutes, waiting for Tom's report. At 4:30 p.m., my phone rang. It was Tom. "I have some information for you," he said. "Can you come to the office?" I was there in 20 minutes. Tom had printed out a folder of photographs. The silver Subaru belonged to a man named David Chen, age 44, divorced, no children. He worked as a commercial real estate broker at a firm on 9th Street. He and Ashley had met at a fitness class at the YMCA 4 months ago. They'd been meeting twice a week at a hotel on I-40 on Thursdays and Sundays, sometimes at the house when Michael was at work. There were photographs, lots of them. David and Ashley holding hands at a cafe. David and Ashley entering a hotel room together. David kissing Ashley on the cheek in a parking lot. I stared at those photographs for a long time without saying anything. "I'm sorry," Tom said finally. "I know this isn't what you wanted to find." "No," I said. "It's exactly what I found yesterday when I heard them upstairs together." "What do you want to do?" Tom asked. "Most people in your situation either confront the spouse or tell the spouse they're being cheated on." "I need to think about it," I said. I drove around Durham for hours. I drove past the hotel where they'd been meeting. I drove past David Chen's office building. I drove past Michael's workplace. I needed to understand how this had happened, how my son, my responsible, careful son, had ended up married to a woman who was betraying him. And then I realized something. I had to talk to Michael, alone, before this got any worse, before anything else happened. I called him at work. "Hey, Mom," he answered on the first ring. "What's up?" "Can you meet me somewhere?" I asked. "Just you, somewhere we can talk privately." There was a pause. "Is everything okay?" "No," I said, "it's not. But I need to tell you in person. Can you meet me at 9th Street Bakery in an hour?" Another pause. "Mom, you're scaring me." "I know," I said. "Just meet me." He was there in 45 minutes. He looked nervous, like he was bracing himself for bad news. We sat at a small table in the corner of the bakery, away from other customers. Michael ordered a coffee he didn't drink. "What's going on?" he asked. I took a breath. I pulled out my phone and showed him the photographs from Tom's folder. I watched his face as he saw them. I watched the moment understanding hit him, the moment his world shifted on its axis, just like mine had. His coffee cup fell to the floor and shattered. Nobody at the bakery even looked up. "Oh my God," Michael whispered. "Oh my God, no." "I'm sorry," I said. "I'm so sorry." He looked at me with tears in his eyes. "How long have you known?" "Since yesterday, when I surprised you. I went into the house and I heard them together, upstairs. Then I hired someone to follow them and find out who he was and what was happening." Michael put his head in his hands. His shoulders shook. I reached across the table and held his hand, and he gripped it like he was drowning. "I need to go home," he said finally. "I need to talk to her." "Do you want me to come with you?" "No," he said. "No, I need to do this alone." But I followed him anyway. I waited in my car outside the house while he went inside. I could see him through the window, pacing back and forth in the living room. I couldn't hear what he was saying, but I could imagine it. The questions, the accusations, the betrayal. 20 minutes later, Ashley came into view. She was holding her phone. She looked shocked. Then she looked angry. Then she started crying. This was the moment I realized something I should have known all along. I wasn't saving Michael from a lie. I was destroying his marriage. I was the instrument of that destruction. Michael came out of the house and got into his car. He sat there for 10 minutes without starting the engine. Just sat there. I watched him through the windshield of my own car, and I understood that I'd made a terrible mistake. He drove to a hotel. I followed him. He checked in for 3 nights. That night, I finally called my lawyer friend Patricia. Not my boss, Patricia, but a lawyer I'd known since college. I needed someone who understood family law. "He needs to document everything," Patricia told me over the phone. "If they're going to separate, he needs to be careful about assets, about the house. He needs to talk to a divorce attorney immediately." Divorce attorney. The words hit me like a physical blow. "It's only been 3 years," I said. "Yeah, well, infidelity doesn't care about time frames," Patricia said. "Has he hired counsel yet?" "I don't know. We just found out this afternoon." "He needs to," Patricia said, "and he needs to do it fast." I hung up and called Michael. He didn't answer. I texted him. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." He finally texted back at midnight. "We need to talk, but not today. I can't deal with this today." The next morning, I went to see him at the hotel. He was sitting in the lobby looking like he hadn't slept. He probably hadn't. "I want to thank you," he said, "for telling me. Even though it feels like you destroyed my life, I need to thank you for that." "Michael, and I also want to ask you why you didn't just call ahead and tell me you were coming," he said. "Why you had to surprise us. Why you had to be there to find out." It was a fair question. It was the question I'd been asking myself since yesterday. "I don't know," I said. "I just wanted to see you guys." "Well, now you've seen me," he said. "You've seen what happens when you get what you wish for." He hired a lawyer that afternoon. James Morrison, a divorce attorney with an office on Fayetteville Street. I never met him, but I heard about the meetings from Michael. Ashley had admitted to the affair. She wanted to reconcile. Michael didn't. Over the next month, the separation became official. Ashley moved out. Michael stayed in the house but listed it for sale. He told me he couldn't live there anymore, not with all the memories attached to every room. I asked him if he blamed me. "I blame Ashley," he said. "I blame David Chen, but yeah, I also blame you a little bit. You made this real by investigating it. You turned it into a legal matter instead of letting me figure it out on my own." "You would have figured it out eventually," I said. "Maybe," he said. "Or maybe we would have worked it out. Or maybe it would have blown up differently. But you made the choice for us. You decided what was going to happen." He was right. I had decided. I'd walked into that house with the spare key, and I'd set a chain of events in motion that I couldn't stop. Michael and I didn't talk for 3 months. The silence between us was a living thing. It grew and festered and took on a shape of its own. Linda tried to mediate, but Michael wouldn't hear it. Then one day in June, he called me. "I want you to know something," he said. "I've been in therapy. I've been working through all of this with Dr. Patterson. And I've realized that you were right to tell me. Even though it hurt, even though it destroyed my marriage, you were right. I deserved to know the truth." I started crying. "I'm so sorry, Michael." "Don't be," he said. "I'm selling the house for $530,000. The realtor thinks it'll close by the end of July. After I pay off the mortgage and the legal fees, I'll have about $250,000 in equity. I'm going to take that money and go back to school. I'm thinking about getting my MBA. I'm thinking about starting over. That sounds good, I said. That sounds really good. Mom, he said, I want you to know that I forgive you. For following that guy, for hiring the investigator, for telling me about Ashley. I forgive you. Those words saved me. Not completely. I'll never be completely saved from what I did that afternoon. But enough. They saved me enough. The house sold on August 2nd. Michael went back to UNC to start his graduate program in September. He met someone in his cohort, a woman named Jennifer who worked in nonprofit management. They started dating. It was slow and careful and nothing like his relationship with Ashley. A year later, they were still together. I asked Michael once if he thought any of this would have happened if I hadn't shown up that day. I don't know, he said. Maybe Ashley and I weren't meant to make it. Maybe David Chen was just a symptom of something that was already wrong. Or maybe you saved my life by forcing me to face the truth. And maybe I ruined it, I said. Maybe, he agreed. But I'm 33 years old and I'm in a healthy relationship with a good woman, and I'm pursuing a degree that actually excites me. So even if you ruined the old one, you helped create something better. Linda and I still have Sunday dinners together. David and I broke up after 6 months. He was a nice man, but he was also boring, and I realized I was just using him to distract myself from what had happened with Michael. I think about that afternoon often. I think about the moment I heard that laugh coming from upstairs. I think about all the choices I could have made differently. I could have left the house immediately. I could have called Michael and pretended I was in town. I could have gone to a hotel and never said a word about what I'd heard. But I made the choice I made. I investigated. I followed. I told the truth. And sometimes the truth isn't kind. Sometimes the truth destroys things that seemed solid. Sometimes the truth requires you to live with the knowledge that you set something in motion that you can never take back. But sometimes, if you're lucky, it also leads to something better. Even if you had to break everything to get there. Michael got married to Jennifer last spring. It was a small wedding, nothing like the elaborate thing he'd planned with Ashley. Just close family and a few friends at a restaurant in Chapel Hill. He asked me to do a reading from Maya Angelou. When I finished, he hugged me and whispered, "Thank you." I'm still not entirely sure what he was thanking me for. For the reading? For telling him the truth? For loving him enough to destroy his world when I thought it needed destroying? Maybe all of it.